The ship shook like a toy in a child's angry hands. Red lights flashed everywhere inside the passenger area. The computer voice spoke in many different languages, all saying the same terrible thing: emergency landing. Prepare for crash. Ambassador Zekthara held tight to her seat. Her blue skin had turned pale with fear. Around her, 11 other beings from different worlds sat in their own seats. They all looked scared. Some were praying. Others had closed their eyes and waited. All except one. Dr. Sarah Chun was human. She came from a planet called Earth. While everyone else sat frozen with fear, she was busy. Her hands moved quickly over a small device she carried. She was reading numbers and information about the planet below them. Her brown eyes moved fast as she studied the data. "The atmosphere is good for breathing," she said to no one in particular. "Gravity is a bit heavy, but not too bad. Temperature looks cold, but not deadly." Zekthara stared at her. How could this human think about science at a time like this? They were about to crash. They might all die. But the human acted like she was planning a vacation. The ship hit the ground hard. Metal screamed against rock and dirt. Everyone was thrown forward in their seats. The lights went out for a moment. Then emergency lights came on, making everything look red and scary. Sarah was the first to move. She unbuckled her safety belt and stood up. She checked herself for injuries, then started moving to each passenger. "Are you hurt?" she asked the Zekthara. Her voice was calm and steady. Zekthara touched her head. There was a small cut, but nothing serious. "I think I am fine." Sarah nodded and moved to the next person. She checked everyone quickly. Most had small cuts and bruises. One passenger, a tall gray being called Horvik, had hurt his arm. Sarah helped him make a sling from torn cloth. "You know medical treatment?" asked Dr. Yilmaz, a scientist from the Corvan world. "A little," Sarah said. "Humans learn basic first aid. You never know when you might need it." The ship's computer started talking again. Its voice sounded damaged, like it was speaking through water. "Emergency landing complete. Hull damaged. Communication systems offline. Location: unknown planet. Estimated rescue time: 30 standard days minimum." Everyone went quiet. 30 days. They were stuck here for 30 days. Sarah walked to a broken wall panel and looked inside. She pulled out a small emergency kit. Inside were 4 nutrition bars and some water cleaning tablets. "This is all the food?" she asked. The computer answered, "Negative. Main emergency supplies were damaged in crash. This represents total remaining food stores." Sarah looked at the 4 small bars. Then she looked at the 12 passengers. She did quick math in her head. "If we split these evenly, each person gets 1/3 of a bar per day," said Zekthara. "That might keep us alive for 12 days if we do not move around much." The other passengers nodded. This made sense. They would need to be very careful with food. They would need to stay calm and wait for rescue. Sarah put the bars down and walked toward the broken door of the ship. She looked outside at the new world. "Where are you going?" asked Zekthara. "To look around," Sarah said. "I want to see what kind of place this is." "But we must stay with the ship," said a small furry being called Quillix. "Rescue teams will look for the ship. If we leave, they might not find us." Sarah smiled. It was not a mean smile, but it was different from the scared looks everyone else had. "I'm not leaving. I'm exploring. There's a difference." She stepped outside the ship. The air was cold and thin, but she could breathe. The sky was purple, and 2 suns hung in it like yellow eyes. All around them were strange trees. They looked like they were made of crystal or glass. They were tall and caught the light from the 2 suns. The light made rainbow colors dance across the ground. Sarah took a deep breath. She looked at the crystal trees, then at the strange plants growing near the ground. She saw movement in the distance, animals or something like animals. Interesting, she said to herself. She walked back into the ship. The other passengers were talking in quiet voices about rationing and survival techniques. Each species had their own ideas about how to stay alive when resources were limited. The Corvins wanted to create committees to manage everything. The Helians suggested meditation to use less energy. The Quillics spoke about entering a state, like hibernation, to slow down their body functions. Sarah listened for a few minutes. Then she picked up some pieces of broken metal from the ship. "What are you doing?" asked Zekthara. "Making tools," Sarah said simply. She found a piece of metal that was long and sharp. She wrapped one end with cloth to make a handle. It looked like a knife. Tools for what? Sarah looked at her new knife. Then she looked out at the crystal forest, forgetting dinner. The other passengers looked at each other. They did not understand. There was no dinner to get. They had 4 nutrition bars. That was all the food they had. But Sarah was already moving toward the door again. This time, she took her knife and a small emergency kit. "I'll be back before the sun sets," she said. "Try not to worry too much." She walked out into the purple sky and crystal forest. The other 11 passengers watched her go. They were confused and worried. Zekthara realized something strange. While all of them were thinking about how to survive with what they had, the human was thinking about how to get more dot. It was a completely different way of thinking about their problem. The crystal trees made soft singing sounds when the wind blew through them. Sarah's footsteps crunched on the strange ground as she walked deeper into the forest. She was not afraid. She looked curious and alert, like she was solving an interesting puzzle. Behind her, in the broken ship, 11 civilized beings from across the galaxy prepared to carefully ration 4 nutrition bars and wait patiently for rescue. They did not know that. They were about to learn something new about the species called humans. While Sarah explored the crystal forest, the other passengers organized themselves. Ambassador Zekthara took charge because she had military training. She was good at making plans and keeping order. "We must be smart about this," she told the group. "We have 4 nutrition bars and 12 people. If we eat 1/3 of a bar each day, we can last 12 days. Maybe rescue will come by then." Dr. Yilmaz from Corvin nodded. "My people have survived food shortages before. The key is discipline. We must stick to the plan no matter how hungry we feel." Quillics, the small furry being, agreed. "On my world, we sometimes go many days without food during the cold season. We slow down our bodies and minds. We think less, move less, need less." Each alien species had their own way of dealing with hard times. The Helians suggested group meditation to reduce stress. The Travic delegate wanted to create a schedule for everything: when to sleep, when to wake, when to eat their small portions. They spent 2 hours making rules and plans. Everything was organized. Everything was logical. They felt better having a system, but they also felt hungry. The first nutrition bar was divided into 12 tiny pieces. Each piece was no bigger than a person's thumb. When Zekthara handed out the portions, everyone looked at their piece sadly. "This is very small," whispered one passenger. "It will get worse before it gets better," said Zekthara. "But we will survive if we are careful." They ate their tiny portions slowly. Each bite was precious. Some passengers chewed for a long time to make it last. Others saved half for later. As the purple suns moved across the strange sky, they settled into their survival routine. Some passengers tried to sleep to save energy. Others sat quietly and tried not to think about food. Hours passed. The suns were getting lower when they heard sounds from outside. Footsteps were coming back to the ship. Sarah appeared in the doorway. But she looked different now. Her clothes were dirty from crawling around in the forest. Her hair had bits of leaves and crystal dust in it. And she was carrying things that her arms were full of strange objects. There were glowing mushrooms that gave off soft light. There were fruits that looked like purple apples, but with silver spots. She had some small dead animals that looked like rabbits, but with 6 legs instead of 4. And her shirt was bunched up like a bag, holding something that sparkled. "Sorry I took so long," she said cheerfully. She dropped everything near the center of their camp. "I wanted to test things before I brought them back. You know, make sure they weren't poisonous." The other passengers stared. Zekthara felt her mouth fall open. "Test things?" she asked. "How did you test them?" Sarah pointed to a small device from the emergency kit. "This medical scanner can check for basic toxins. Also, I tried tiny amounts first and waited to see if I felt sick." She shrugged like this was normal. "Standard procedure." "Standard procedure for what?" "Foraging," Sarah said. She started sorting her collection. Finding food in the wild. Every human learns the basics. Dr. Yilmaz looked worried. "But eating unknown foods is very dangerous. You could have died." Sarah nodded. "Sure, there's risk. But starving to death is also dangerous." She picked up one of the glowing mushrooms. These grow inside the crystal trees. The minerals from the crystal make them glow, but also make them very nutritious. Like taking vitamins. She held up one of the rabbit creatures. "These guys are everywhere. They eat the crystal tree seeds, so they're probably safe for us too. They travel in groups of 3, always. And they're not very smart. Easy to catch, if you know how." Quillex stepped closer to look. His nose twitched. "It smells like meat." "It is meat," Sarah said. "Fresh protein. Way better than nutrition bars." The passengers looked at each other. They were confused. Sarah had been gone for only a few hours. How had she learned so much about this world? Sarah opened her shirt bundle. Inside were clear crystals that looked like pieces of broken glass. "And these," she said with a big smile, "are tree sap that crystallized. They taste sweet, like candy. Perfect for dessert." "Dessert?" Zekthara repeated the word like she had never heard it before. "You know, something sweet after dinner." "For fun." Sarah looked around at their shocked faces. "Don't your people eat for pleasure?" "We eat to survive," said the Helian delegate. "Food is fuel for the body. Food is resources to be managed carefully," added Dr. Yilmaz. Sarah tilted her head like she was trying to understand alien thinking. "Okay, but why not enjoy it too? Life's short. Might as well have some fun." She started pulling more things from her pockets. Small tools she had made from ship parts. Bits of string made from plant fibers. Sharp stones that could cut things. "How did you make all this so quickly?" asked Ethara. "Practice," Sarah said. "Humans learn this stuff as kids. Camping, hiking, survival skills. My dad used to take me into the wilderness with just a knife and some basic supplies. Said I needed to learn how to take care of myself." She started arranging pieces of metal from the ship into a circle. Most humans know how to make fire, find water, build shelter, hunt, fish, forage. Basic stuff. This is basic for humans? Quillex squeaked. Sarah looked up from building what appeared to be a cooking area. "Well, yeah. Earth is kind of a tough place. You have to know how to adapt or you don't make it." She gestured around at the crystal forest. "This place is actually pretty nice. The air is clean. There's lots of food if you know where to look. No big predators that I've seen yet. The weather is cold, but not too cold." The alien passengers looked around at the same forest. To them, it looked scary and dangerous. The purple sky was wrong. The crystal trees were strange and unfamiliar. The sounds of unknown animals in the distance were frightening, but to Sarah, it looked like dinner and adventure done. She started preparing the food she had gathered. First, she made a small fire using pieces of the ship and some dry plant material. The aliens watched in amazement as flames appeared from nothing. "Fire," she said simply, "makes food taste better and kills germs." As the smell of cooking meat filled the air, something happened to the alien passengers. Their careful rationing plan suddenly seemed less important. Their tiny nutrition bar portions felt even smaller. Their stomachs started growling. Sarah hummed quietly while she cooked. She seemed happy, like this was all normal for her. Like being stranded on an alien world was just another day. The other passengers sat in their organized groups, holding their emergency rations, watching a human turn survival into something that looked almost like a picnic. They began to understand that they were dealing with a very different kind of being. The kind that didn't just survive difficult situations, the kind that seemed to enjoy them. The smell of cooking meat made everyone's mouth water. While the alien passengers sat with their tiny rations, Sarah worked over her small fire like an expert chef. She had cleaned the rabbit-like animals using a sharp piece of ship metal. Her movements were quick and sure, like she had done this many times before. She explained what she was doing as she worked. "The key is to remove the internal organs first," she said, making careful cuts. "Save the heart and liver though. Those have lots of vitamins. The rest can be composted to help plants grow." Dr. Yilmaz watched with scientific interest. "You learned this anatomy very quickly. All mammals are pretty similar," Sarah said. "Once you understand the basic layout, you can figure out any new species." She held up the cleaned meat. "These guys are actually simpler than Earth rabbits. Fewer bones, bigger muscle groups." She had also prepared the mushrooms and fruits. The mushrooms she sliced thin and laid on heated metal from the ship. The fruits she cut open to check for seeds or pits. "Always check new fruits carefully," she told the group. Seeds might be poisonous even if the flesh is safe. But it was what happened next that really amazed the alien passengers. Sarah had spent time making better tools. Using pieces from the ship, plant fibers, and stones, she had created a spear. It was long and straight with a sharp metal point. The shaft was wrapped with something that looked like string. "Where did you get that cord?" asked Quillix. "Made it," Sarah said. She pointed to some plants nearby. "Those stems have strong fibers inside. You strip them out, twist them together, and you get rope." She tested the spear by throwing it at a crystal tree. It stuck deep into the trunk. "Why do you need a weapon?" asked the Zekdara. "You already caught food," Sarah smiled. "This was just scouting. Those six-legged rabbits are small. There are bigger animals out there." The alien passengers looked nervous. Bigger animals usually meant dangerous animals, but Sarah looked excited. "I saw tracks from something about the size of a deer. Probably herbivorous based on the hoof shape. If I can get one of those, we'll have meat for days." She picked up her spear and started walking toward the forest again. "Wait," called. "You are going hunting? Now? It will be dark soon. Best time for hunting," Sarah said. "Animals come to water sources in the evening. Less competition, lower temperatures, easier tracking. But what if you get lost? Or if something dangerous finds you?" Sarah stopped and looked back. Her expression was patient, like she was explaining something simple to children. "I won't get lost. I've been mapping the area in my head all day. And if something dangerous finds me," she hefted her spear, "I'll deal with it." The way she said it made several passengers step back. There was something predatory in her voice, something that reminded them that humans came from a world where creatures hunted each other. Sarah disappeared into the crystal forest again. The aliens sat around her fire, listening to the strange sounds of the alien night. They could hear her moving through the trees. Sometimes her footsteps would stop completely, and they couldn't hear anything. "She moves very quietly," whispered Quillex. "Too quietly," said the Helian delegate. "My species has excellent hearing. I should be able to track her movement, but sometimes she just disappears from sound." They waited for 2 hours. The purple suns had set, and strange stars filled the sky. The crystal trees glowed softly in the darkness, giving everything a magical look. Then they heard it, a sound like a large animal in distress, a crashing noise. Then silence. 30 minutes later, Sarah came back. She was dragging something behind her. It was huge, much bigger than the rabbit creatures. It looked like a deer, but with crystal growths on its antlers and silver fur, and it was dead. "Dinner's here," Sarah said cheerfully. The alien passengers stared. The animal was easily 4 times bigger than Sarah. How had she killed something so large? "How?" asked Dr. Yilmaz. Sarah pointed to her spear, which now had blood on the tip. "Persistence hunting. Humans are really good at it. I followed it for about an hour, staying just close enough to keep it nervous. Animals panic when they're being followed. They run until they get tired." She started dragging the animal closer to their camp. When it stopped to rest, I got close enough for a clean throw. 1 spear to the heart. It didn't suffer. Zekthara felt something strange in her stomach. It wasn't hunger, though she was hungry. It was something like fear, but also like admiration. This human had gone into an unknown forest, tracked a large animal, killed it with a handmade weapon, and brought it back like it was a normal evening activity. "Is this normal for humans?" she asked quietly. Sarah looked up from where she was starting to butcher the animal. "Hunting? Yeah, pretty normal. Not everyone does it, but most humans can if they need to." She worked efficiently, separating the meat into portions. "This should feed all of us for several days. Plus, I can smoke some of it over the fire to preserve it longer." While she worked, she continued teaching them about survival. "The key is understanding ecosystems," she said. "Everything is connected. The crystal trees filter minerals from the soil. The minerals concentrate in the fruits and mushrooms. The animals eat the fruits, so they're full of those same minerals. When we eat the animals, we get everything we need." She pointed to different parts of the animal. "Protein from muscle, vitamins from organs, minerals from bones if we make broth. Nothing gets wasted." By the time she finished preparing the meat, she had portions cooking over the fire. The smell was incredible, rich and savory, with herbs she had found growing near the crystal trees. Then she did something that made the alien passengers question everything they thought they knew about survival situations. She made dessert. Using the crystallized tree sap, some of the fruit and heat from the fire, she created something sweet and complex. It wasn't just food for survival. It was food for pleasure. "You make candy?" asked Quillex in amazement. "Why not?" Sarah said. "We're not just trying to stay alive. We're trying to live well." She offered portions of everything to the other passengers. Fresh meat, cooked vegetables, seasoned mushrooms, and the sweet crystals for dessert. The alien passengers looked at their tiny ration bars, then at Sarah's feast. Slowly, one by one, they put their rations aside and accepted what the human offered. The food was delicious, better than anything they had eaten on their ship. And there was enough for everyone to feel full. As they ate, Sarah talked about her plans for tomorrow. Building better shelters, setting up water collection systems, maybe exploring the area beyond the crystal forest. The alien passengers realized something important. While they had been planning to survive, Sarah had been planning to thrive. And the difference was bigger than they had imagined. 5 days passed on the crystal world. The difference between the alien passengers and the human became impossible to ignore. The aliens stuck to their rationing plan. Each day, They divided their remaining nutrition bars into smaller pieces. They moved slowly to save energy. They slept for long periods. They spoke in quiet voices to conserve strength. By the 5th day, they were weak. Their skin looked pale or dull, depending on their species. Their movements were slow and careful. Some had started to stumble when they walked. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed to be getting stronger. She woke up early each morning and went exploring. She came back with new foods, new materials, new discoveries. She had built a better shelter using crystal tree branches and the ship's emergency blankets. She had created a water collection system that gathered moisture from the air during the night. Most impressive of all, she had improved the food situation every single day. On the 2nd day, she had found a grove of nut trees with protein-rich seeds. On the 3rd day, she discovered underground tubers that tasted like sweet potatoes. On the 4th day, she caught fish from a stream using a net she wove from plant fibers. By the 5th day, she had established what she called renewable food sources. She had marked the best foraging spots, figured out animal migration patterns, and even started a small garden using seeds from the fruits. The contrast was stunning. While the aliens carefully hoarded their dwindling supplies, Sarah had created abundance. How is this possible? Dr. Yilmaz asked weakly. He was sitting in the shade, conserving his energy. You are one person. We are 12. How do you find more food than all of us together? Sarah looked up from where she was weaving a basket. I'm not finding more food. I'm finding the same food that was always here. You guys just aren't looking for it. We are being careful with resources, said Zekthara. We are following survival protocols. Whose survival protocols? Sarah asked gently. The question hung in the air. Each alien species had their own approaches to survival, but they were all similar. They all focused on rationing, conserving, and waiting. Your species evolved on what kind of worlds? Sarah asked. Corvin Prime is a garden world, Dr. Yilmaz said. Rich soil, stable weather, abundant plant life. Food grows everywhere. We rarely experience scarcity. My homeworld has consistent seasons and predictable resources, added Zekthara. When food becomes limited, we organize rationing systems until conditions improve. Each alien described their world. Safe places with stable climates, reliable food sources, and predictable challenges. Worlds where the biggest survival skill was patience. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Your species learned to survive by being careful and waiting for conditions to improve. What about your world? Asked Quillex. Earth is classified as a garden world too, is it not? Sarah laughed. It was not a mean laugh, but it was strange. Like she found something funny that others didn't see. Who classified Earth as a garden world? The Galactic Survey, Dr. Yilmaz said. It has oxygen, water, plant life. It also has tornadoes that can tear apart cities, Sarah said. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Hurricanes with winds so strong they can throw cars around like toys. Floods, droughts, ice ages, volcanic eruptions. She stood up and started pacing, like talking about Earth made her energetic. Then there's the wildlife. Bears that can break trees with their paws. Cats that hunt in packs and can run faster than our vehicles. Snakes with poison that can kill you in minutes. Spiders that jump on you from hiding. Sharks in the water. Birds that dive from the sky to attack. The alien passengers stared at her. And that's just the big stuff, Sarah continued. The bacteria and viruses are constantly trying to kill you. The plants, lots of them are poisonous or covered in thorns. Even the weather changes so fast you can freeze to death in the morning and die of heat stroke in the afternoon. This does not sound like a garden world, whispered Quillex. The Galactic Survey must have made an error, said Zek single quotes THARA. Sarah shook her head. No error. Earth really does have all the things that make a garden world. It just also has all the things that make a death world. She sat back down, but her energy was still high. Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill them every single day. So we got really good at not dying. How good? Dr. Yilmaz asked quietly. Sarah thought about it. Humans can run for hours without stopping. We can survive for weeks without food and days without water. We heal from injuries that would kill most species. We can adapt to almost any climate. We eat things that are poisonous to other creatures. We can track animals across vast distances, hunt in packs, or survive completely alone. She gestured toward the crystal forest. Most importantly, we learn to see opportunities instead of just threats. When humans look at a new environment, we don't think, how do I avoid danger? We think, how do I make this place work for me? That explains much, Zekdora said slowly. While we see this world as a place to survive until rescue, you see it as a place to live. Exactly. Sarah picked up the basket she had been weaving. I'm not trying to last 30 days. I'm trying to build a life here that could last 30 years if necessary. The aliens looked around at everything Sarah had created. The improved shelter, the food storage areas, the tools, the water collection system. She hadn't just adapted to the crystal world. She was changing it to suit her needs. Is this normal for all humans? Asked the Helian delegate. Sarah shrugged. Pretty normal. Some humans are better at it than others, but yeah. We're all descended from people who survived impossible situations. Generation after generation of humans who refused to give up when things got bad. She stood up again and looked toward the horizon. Plus, humans are curious. We want to know what's over the next hill, under that rock, inside that cave. We explore because we can't help ourselves. Even when it's dangerous? Especially when it's dangerous, Sarah grinned. Danger usually means something interesting is happening. Dr. Yilmaz shook his head in amazement. No wonder humans spread across so many worlds so quickly. You do not see hostile environments. You see challenges to overcome and opportunities to exploit, Sarah added. Every problem is just a solution waiting to be found. As if to prove her point, she picked up a new tool she had made. A digging stick with a sharp metal tip. Speaking of which, I think I found where those underground tubers grow best. Who wants to help me dig up dinner? The alien passengers, weak from their careful rationing, watched the energetic human prepare for another food-gathering expedition. They were starting to understand that they were not dealing with just a different species. They were dealing with a different philosophy of existence entirely. Humans didn't just survive harsh conditions. They thrived on them. 28 days after the crash, Captain Voss of the rescue ship Meridian Dawn received a strange report from her sensors. Captain, called her navigation officer, we have found the crash site, but the readings are unusual. Captain Voss was a Quellian, a species known for careful thinking and logical planning. She had rescued hundreds of crash survivors over her career. She knew what to expect. Weak emergency signals, minimal life signs, survivors barely hanging on until help arrived. What kind of unusual? She asked. The emergency beacon is still active, but it has been moved from the original crash site. It is now approximately 2 kilometers away. And there are multiple heat sources, not just the crashed ship. Captain Voss frowned. Multiple heat sources? At least 7 different fires, Captain. And there are structures that were not there when the ship crashed. Structures? They appear to be buildings, Captain. This made no sense. Crash survivors did not build settlements. They found shelter and waited for rescue. They certainly did not move the emergency beacon. Take us down for a closer look, Captain Voss ordered. What she saw from the air made her question her senses. The crash site had been transformed into what looked like a small village. There were several buildings, made from crystal tree branches and ship materials. There were organized garden areas with growing plants. There were what appeared to be food storage structures, water collection systems, and even decorative elements like arranged stones and planted flowers. Smoke rose from multiple cooking fires. She could see people, the survivors, moving around actively. They did not look like people who had been starving for a month. "Are you certain this is the right location?" she asked her navigator. "Confirmed, Captain. This is where the diplomatic transport crashed." Captain Voss landed her ship in a clearing near the settlement. When she stepped outside, she was greeted by Ambassador Zekthara. But this was not the weak, desperate survivor she expected to find. Zekthara looked healthy. Her blue skin had good color. She moved with energy and strength. "Captain Voss," Zekthara said formally, "we are grateful for your rescue, though I must admit we have been quite comfortable here." "Comfortable?" Captain Voss looked around at the settlement. "Ambassador, you have been stranded on an uncharted world for nearly 30 days with minimal supplies." "That is correct," Zekthara said. "Though I should mention that our situation improved dramatically after the first few days." She gestured toward the settlement. "Perhaps you would like to see what we have built here?" Captain Voss followed Zekthara on a tour that challenged everything she knew about survival situations. The survivors had not just stayed alive, they had created a functioning community. The buildings were well constructed and weatherproof. The gardens contained dozens of different plant species, all apparently edible. The food storage areas held preserved meats, dried fruits, fermented vegetables, and other supplies that could last for months. "How did you accomplish all this?" Captain Voss asked. "We had excellent guidance," Zekthara said. She pointed toward one of the garden areas, where a human was teaching 2 other survivors how to identify edible roots. Dr. Sarah Chun showed us that survival was not about rationing what we had, but about finding what we needed. Captain Voss watched the human work. Sarah moved with confidence and skill, like someone who had been living on this world for years instead of weeks. "The human did all this?" "She taught us to do it," Zekthara corrected. Dr. Chum believes that knowledge should be shared. She has spent the last 3 weeks training all of us in what she calls practical survival skills. As they continued the tour, Captain Voss met the other survivors. Each one looked healthy and well-fed. More importantly, each one had learned new skills. Dr. Yilmaz had become an expert at preparing the local mushrooms. Quillex had learned to weave baskets and nets from plant fibers. The Helian delegate had developed a talent for smoking meats to preserve them. "This is unprecedented," Captain Voss said. "In my experience, crash survivors focus on staying alive until rescue. They do not establish permanent settlements." "We thought the same way at first," Zekthara admitted. "We planned to ration our emergency supplies and wait." Dr. Chun showed us a different approach. They found Sarah near the main fire, preparing what smelled like a complex and delicious meal. She looked up when Captain Voss approached. "You must be our rescue ship," Sarah said cheerfully. "Perfect timing. Dinner will be ready in about an hour." "Dinner?" Captain Voss repeated. "Roasted crystal deer with herb stuffing, sautéed rainbow mushrooms, tuber casserole, and crystallized fruit compote for dessert," Sarah said. "I wanted to make something special for our last night here." Captain Voss stared. "You are treating this like a celebration." Sarah smiled. "Why not? We survived, we thrived, we learned new things, and now we get to go home with great stories. What's not to celebrate?" Later, while the other survivors packed their few remaining possessions, Captain Voss sat with Sarah and Zekthara around the fire. "I need to understand something," Captain Voss said. "According to galactic survival protocols, at least half of your group should have perished. Instead, You all appear to be healthier than when you crashed. That is accurate, Zekthara said. I have gained weight during our time here. How is this possible? Sarah poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks into the purple sky. Different planets, different survival strategies. Most species evolved on worlds where resources are predictable and abundant. When resources become scarce, the logical approach is to conserve and wait for conditions to improve. But humans evolved on Earth, Zekthara added, where resources are unpredictable and dangerous. They learned to create abundance instead of managing scarcity. Captain Voss thought about this. You were saying that humans do not think in terms of survival, but in terms of prosperity. We think in terms of adaptation, Sarah said. Give us any environment, and we will figure out how to make it work for us. It is not enough to just stay alive. We want to live well. This could change everything, Captain Voss said slowly. If human survival techniques could be taught to other species. Zekthar nodded. I intend to propose exactly that to the Galactic Council. We should establish survival training programs with human instructors. Sarah laughed. Just remember, the most important lesson is not about techniques. It is about attitude. Do not ask, how do I survive this? Ask, how do I make this place better than when I found it? As the rescue ship prepared for departure the next morning, Captain Voss filed her official report. But she knew the numbers would not capture the real story. 12 survivors had been stranded with 4 nutrition bars and no hope of finding food. 30 days later, they were leaving behind a thriving settlement with enough preserved food to support a research station for months. The difference was one human who refused to accept that scarcity was inevitable. Before they left, Sarah took one last look at the crystal world. Thanks for the vacation, she said quietly. I hope someone else gets to enjoy what we built here. As the ship lifted off, Captain Voss realized that she had witnessed something historic. The galaxy had always seen humans as just another species. They'd been wrong. Humans were not just survivors. They were transformers. Wherever they went, they did not just adapt to the environment. They improved it. The rescue was over, but Captain Voss suspected that the real adventure was just beginning.